Dr. the Honorable Ralph Gonsalves, Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Honorable Kamala Gonsalves, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, Nathaniel Williams, Mr. Knight also from the Ministry of Trade, members of the media, listeners to NBC Radio, Star FM, WeFM, and I'm told we are also joined by Radio St. Kitts in St. Kitts and Nevis. Good morning. We are coming to you live from Cabinet Room this morning, where once again Prime Minister Dr. the Honorable Ralph Gonsalves will update the nation on a number of national, regional issues, and as usual take questions following his statement from members of the media. Prime Minister.
Good morning, Hans, and members of the media and the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and at least for the first part of this press briefing, given the issue which has arisen in St. Kitts and Nevis, I have a statement to read. This is a press statement on the general elections in St. Kitts and Nevis. The government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines congratulates the government and people of St. Kitts and Nevis, including all political parties, on the conduct of peaceful elections yesterday, February 16, 2015. The government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines is disappointed that the Office of the Supervisor of Elections is yet to declare officially the results of the preliminary count and has not put appropriate measures in place to effect the final count in accordance with the law and established practice. This unprecedented tardiness of the Office of the Supervisor of Elections in both respects has given rise to unnecessary political uncertainty, particularly against the backdrop of the controversies surrounding the motion of no confidence against the government and the alteration of the constituency boundaries. The democratic institutions of state, namely the law courts and the general elections themselves, have worked satisfactorily despite hiccups along the way. It is not acceptable for the Office of the Supervisor of Elections to abdicate its legal and customary obligations or responsibilities. Peace, patience, and calm, and enduring calm, are requisites now more than ever for the political leaders, civil society, and the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. Mature political leadership wedded to the values of democracy, constitutionalism, law and order is especially required. All must accept the verdict of the people in the highest traditions of the practice of democracy in our Caribbean civilization. The Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines has spoken on the above and related matters with Dr. Denzil Douglas, leader of the St. Kitts and Nevis Labour Party, and Dr. Timothy Harris, leader of Team Unity. He has also been in oral communication with other Prime Ministers in our region, including Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit, chairman of the OECS. The Prime Minister of St. Vincent and Grenadines has expressed too his government's views on the matter to the Secretary General of CARICOM and other important Caribbean personalities. He has been unable thus far to reach the chairman of CARICOM, Prime Minister Perry Christie of the Bahamas. The government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines continues to respect the independence of all lawful institutions in St. Kitts and Nevis. We recognize, too, the commitment of CARICOM and the OECS to the upholding of our profound democratic values as expressed in their foundation documents. I have been, since early this morning, in touch with the leaders in St. Kitts and other individuals, and also with several prime ministers across the region. Though I am not the chairman of CARICOM, I am a senior prime minister, and it was necessary and desirable for a communication to be taken and done. Since last night, I was in touch with the chairman of CARICOM, the OECS, Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit of Dominica. And this morning I also spoke to him. This particular statement is being sent as I speak to other leaders in the region, because I'm hoping that a joint statement along these lines through the OECS and CARICOM would emerge. I want to say this, that the latest information that I received from St. Kitts just a couple of minutes before I came in here is that everything appears to be calm, and there is a growing recognition across the country that Team Unity has won the elections. I want to indicate too that no request has been made by the authorities in St. Kitts for the regional security services from the regional security system. I spoke to Mr. Grantley Watson, the regional coordinator himself, this morning, which it is an indication that everything is calm. I think it is important for those words, peace, patience, and calm, to simply resonate throughout our region, and very much so in St. Kitts and Nevis. Dr. Douglas has been Prime Minister for an unprecedented 4 terms. He has done a tremendous amount of good work for St. Kitts and Nevis and for the people of the region generally, and particularly in the area of matters pertaining to health, non-communicable diseases, chronic non-communicable diseases, and of course HIV and AIDS, which he has been a United Nations champion. And Dr. Harris, I know him. I know other members within Team Unity, and I want to congratulate them on what all the information has come out from St. Kitts, despite the uncertainties, that it appears as though they have done well and would be forming the government. Now, we cannot have the office of the supervisor of elections in any country not concluding in a timely fashion their legal and customary mandate. That is to say, to have the votes counted preliminarily, to have a final count start in the case of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Before people go to sleep on nights, we know what the preliminary results are, and at 9 o'clock the next morning, in the various constituencies, the final count takes place, and then the supervisor of elections returns the election writ to His Excellency the Governor General, so that the Governor General can then call upon the person whom, in his opinion, has a majority of the members in the Parliament to be Prime Minister, to be sworn in as Prime Minister. That's how the system works. So the office of the Supervisor of Elections is critical in this regard. And in the conduct of the duties of any Supervisor of Elections, he or she is required to take no instructions from anyone in the conduct of his or her duties. They have a constitutional independence. So I think all those things must be stated. When I spoke to Timothy Harris, I brought him up to date very briefly and told him that after elections, after there's a swearing in, that an important matter which we have to discuss would be the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union, the Monetary Council meeting, which is scheduled to take place in St. Kitts, Nevis, on the 24th. I don't know whether we should shift the locale. I don't know, but that's a matter for consultation with the governor of the central bank. There's no reason on the face of it to do so, but persons may be busy doing other things and therefore maybe go somewhere else, but that's not an important matter. I just raised that. Because work has to go on. This is how democracies work. You proceed, you get things done, you have elections, and the work for and on behalf of the people continue. That is how our countries have worked since independence and certainly since universal adult suffrage. And long may all of that remain so. For those who have taken to listening to what I have to say in St. Kitts and Nevis, I repeat the point which was made in the statement itself, that we respect the independence of all the institutions in St. Kitts. At the same time, we have to uphold our commitment to the foundation values, foundation democratic values in both the OECS treaty and also in the revised treaty of Chaguaramas, which establishes CARICOM. I don't know if you have any question to ask me on this matter while the people in St. Kitts and Nevis hear about what the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines are saying. And Hans, perhaps you can ask for any couple of questions which they want to ask on that. If the statement itself requires any clarification, I believe it speaks for itself. And then I will go ahead with the rest of my briefing to the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines on other matters so that the listeners in St. Kitts can leave us, St. Kitts and Nevis can leave us.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Any questions on this particular issue from members of the media? It appears that there are no questions.
Fine. Well, I want to thank those who in St. Kitts and Nevis who probably logged on to us here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. It's the blessing of the technology of which Almighty God has given to us. Now, I want to address a couple of matters. I will deal with a few regional issues before I come to the domestic matters. Since we last met, there are two important meetings which I attended regionally, which I believe demand some commentary to the public. The first is the historic 60th meeting of the OECS Authority, which was held in Martinique. And at that time, Martinique was admitted as an associate member of the OECS. As you are aware, since the revised Treaty of Basse-Terre in 2010, you have 6 independent member states who are members of the OECS. They're well known. Antigua and Barbuda, Dominica, Grenada, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And 1 British overseas territory, Montserrat, which has received the entrustments from the British government to enter the OECS as a full member. And I will explain what that means shortly. And we have 2 associate members, Anguilla and the British Virgin Islands. We now have another associate member, the first time a country, a territory outside of the territories which had British suzerainty before independence. With the admission of Martinique to associate membership, there has been a historic breakthrough. It is important to note that both the Sarkozy government in France and the Hollande government currently, they both wrote to us indicating their support for this particular policy of Martinique and Guadeloupe to seek associate membership. You may recall just over a year ago, or thereabouts, I went to Martinique, I addressed the regional council, and I've been in the forefront with some other leaders, St. Lucia, St. Dominica, in pushing for the associate membership. President Lechimi of the Regional Council in Martinique came here in January 2014. You may recall we visited down at Hope and so forth to see the damage arising from the Christmas disaster of December 2013. Associate membership means that Martinique will have the right of participation in the OECS and engage in all matters of functional cooperation. But it has not signed on to the economic protocol, which is part of the revised treaty. The only full members have signed on to the protocol, and inside there are some specific trade issues, and very importantly, the freedom of movement issues. But all the functional cooperation on education, on health, in business, facilitation, and so on and so forth, they are part of it. But in the way in which a Vincentian can go to Grenada just with an ID card or a passport and get indefinite stay, you're not going to be able to do that with Martinique, though the arrangements are being made for persons from the other territories to be able to enter for limited periods of time. The population has moved of the OECS thus has moved from about 700,000 to just over 1 million. Martinique is 400,000 persons. And the GDP of the OECS has increased by another 50%. And when Guadeloupe comes in, the population would be 1.5 million. So these are significant developments. Now, the person on the Connery omnibus may not immediately feel the effect of that, but is an important developmental step. The person in Rose Place or Paul's Avenue may not feel the immediate impact, but as the weeks and months roll by, you would see the importance of having Martinique inside of the OECS as an associate member. The second important matter which I want to address is there are other things which occurred at the OECS meeting, but I only want to address the highlights, and that was undoubtedly the highlight. I attended the meeting of LIAT shareholders on Friday in Barbados, and there are several decisions which came out of that LIAT meeting. First of all, the shareholders endorsed the company's strategic direction and its network and cost restructuring. Each of those formulations are important. The endorsement of the company's strategic direction and its network and cost restructuring. The LIAT has embarked on a major structural change to both its network and its cost base. What has it done in relation to, first of all, its refleeting? It has 8 planes 8 new ATRs, 4 ATR 72s, and 4 ATR 42s. That is where we went. There are 2 Dash 8s which are still in operation. There were 13 Dash 8s in all, some purchased, some lease. We are hoping to be able to return, to sell those which we haven't returned, the others, by June. It costs in a lot of money to keep them on an annual basis. But in the case of the 2 Dash 8s, you have to have separate pilots, because it's not like driving a bus, that a man can drive equally a Toyota bus, and somebody could drive a Nissan bus or a Austin bus. It's a different business. You have to be specifically trained in respect of the particular aircraft and function and operate with that type of aircraft. There are 2 other aircraft, 2 other Dash 8, 2 other ATRs we are going for. The 5th ATR 42, it has to be, we have paid down on it already, and it is ready for delivery. So that has to be received on a particular arrangement. And then the purchase of the other Dash 8, the other ATR 72 is postponed to next year. And we have to, when we have all of those, we would be in a better position with all our routes, and then of course we would be saving a great deal of money with the getting rid of all the Dash 8s. We have gotten rid of 6. There's 7 for us more to get rid of. We are told by the management by the end of June. Resources will come to us through the sale of the Dash 8s to help to do something else. That something else is to cut the number of staff, because you'll have to cut in any case, because if you get rid of all the Dash 8s. And the plan is to cut 180 staff members from 800 to 620. It may be at 620, the number would still be more than is required. But that requires $22 million to do the severance. Though on an annual basis, we'll be saving $13 million as a consequence of the separation of personnel from the company, voluntary or otherwise, and the management would address that. But we need some resources from the sale of the Dash 8s to effect this kind of a change. Then we have to redefine the network, and we have to establish the base in Barbados and a gateway in Antigua. The idea is to have 1 ATR 42 and 3 ATR 72s in Barbados, 2 ATRs in Port of Spain, ATR 42s in Port of Spain, and 1 ATR 42 and 1 ATR 72 in Antigua. I hope you got those numbers. Now, so Barbados will be the primary hub, but with gateways in Antigua, an important gateway in Antigua. There would also be a gateway in Dominica and one in Ogle in Guyana. So it would be the primary hub in Barbados, major gateway in Antigua, and other gateways. All the changes, these kinds of restructuring we are talking about, is estimated according to the company plan to add over $30 million in the year, what you may call a mature year, after you finish all of these restructurings. The exit of the Dash 8 fleet in 2018 will result in a saving of $30 million. And as I've said, the reduction in the Liat headcount in a full year, there will be a saving of $13 million, all Eastern Caribbean currency. Now, what are the factual matrices to account for this? This primary hub in Barbados and critical gateway in Antigua and other gateways. Let's look at the network performance, Liat network performance for 2014. Destination ranked by revenue. There are 13 destinations. The first destination is Barbados. The second is St. Vincent for Liat. So when people talk about why is it that I put money in Liat and the rest of it, Barbados moved in 2014, the Barbados destination moved 126,660 passengers. In St. Vincent, 81,046 passengers. Number 3 was Trinidad at 68,323 passengers. And so on until you get down to Martinique, just over 9,000 passengers. Antigua is listed at number 4. Dominica number 5, St. Kitts number 6, St. Martin 7, Tortola 8, Grenada 9, St. Kitts 10, Puerto Rico 11, Guyana 12, Martinique 13. If you take the first 6 destinations, that is to say, the destinations outside of Antigua, you take in the southern cone, that is to say Barbados, St. Vincent, Trinidad, St. Lucia, Grenada, and Guyana. You take the southern network performance. They have 60% of the passengers and roughly 60% of the revenues. This is not a question of nationalism or pitting one country as against another. This is just looking at how the network exists and what you can do to optimize, to be optimal in a modern enterprise. If you look at network performance for 2014, top 10 routes by revenue, the top route by revenue is Barbados St. Vincent. The second route by revenue is Trinidad St. Vincent. The third route is Barbados St. Lucia. The fourth, Dominica, Puerto Rico. The fifth, Barbados, Guyana. The sixth, Barbados, Grenada. So if you notice that Barbados is involved in the top routes, and I think it is important to make that point. Now, there was a meeting prior to the shareholders' meeting between the Prime Ministers and the Caribbean Development Bank, and they have to come back to us, both the CDB and the Board of Directors, with some other proposals in going forward. The shareholders have agreed to an injection of equity as working capital up to the tune of $5 million up to March, 5 million EC, to be put in proportions. Because clearly, if you're going to pay the severance, you're going to lay off persons. You don't want those who are remaining in the immediate future as you're going forward you're late with the payment of their salaries as late has been. You have to have some working capital to make sure that as part of the process of consolidation, focus, growth and development as a continuum. In the case of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we are 10% in LIAT, so we are looking at 500,000 EC dollars. Barbados is 50%, they're $2.5 million, and so on and so forth. That's how it would be distributed. But $20 million is what you require for working capital purposes, but it's $5 million you would require up to March. But we are seeking to put the working capital and the other investment monies within a package for the Caribbean Development Bank. I know every time we do these analyses and we go in with LIAT, there are always some people out there who don't pay attention to the data, they don't pay attention to what is taking place, and just saying that this is a complete waste of time. Get LIAT out of the sky, let somebody else come in. Well, we have gone that road several times before. And I have had over the last 14 years to soldier with this entity, because you see what the numbers tell us. It's not it's not something of you do something off the seat of your trousers. LIAT needs to do a lot of changes, and I want the workers in LIAT to appreciate this. And the management through and through also have to appreciate this, everybody at the chain. Now, there is something called an available seat mile, which is an important airline metric. In the US, a US carrier has an average cost per available seat mile at 14 cents, 14 US cents. But you can't use that same measurement here, because you have to make all the adjustments for distances and the like. And the people who are experts in this field did the adjustment. And if you adjust that metric to the LIAT average stage length, you're supposed to get 32. LIAT should be at 32 US cents a mile. An available seat mile, sorry. But LIAT budget for 2015 assumes that you would be 16 cents per available seat line more at 48 cents. And when you do the severance and you do the dash 8 removal, you still don't reach 32 US cents per available seat mile. You would be at 41, but you're coming down from 48. So you can see that there is still further work which has to be done to achieve the benchmark, and you have to effect cost reduction of another $22 million US in order to reach that stage. This is where the route restructuring is important. The post-severance and the dash 8 removal, you still have to do other things, including the route restructuring, as we have been talking about here. And also what has to be done, we have to have an improvement in the aircraft utilization to 8.6 hours per day. This is the flying time, not the time on the ground. In 2012, we have been advised that the average utilization time for aircraft in the air was 6.7 hours per day. Then last year it went to 7.6 hours per day aircraft utilization in the air. And this year we're hoping to carry it to 8.6 hours a day. If we carry to 8.6 hours a day, half of that $22 million, we would get there because we will save 11.5 million US dollars. So there are all of these things. Now, look, we have had a lot of legacy issues with LIAT, and we have been making reform, but it has been a painful process. And I ask for a patience and a calm, given the importance of LIAT in the way we're moving forward. The facile answers, not going to work with a complicated problem like this. And can you imagine what would happen to our hotel industry, our social and economic and business intercourse, if we didn't have LIAT? People say, well, you'll get another plane will come in. But when? And how would it function? And so on and so forth. I am hopeful that after the next general elections, when this government is returned to office, I hope somebody else from within the region takes the burden from me of being the chairman of the shareholders of LIAT. It would have been a painful exercise to do all the fleet renewal, get everything on the place and so on, because not that I'm saying to my colleagues, take it away from me. I'm just saying that it's always good in a matter like this when I brought it to a particular stage. So that's LIAT. In a nutshell, I want to address the issue of fuel prices. I've done this already, and I'll do more on it again today because it's important for people to appreciate. I want to start with the last set of reductions which we did. That is to say, the LPG. And I want to say that the people of this country would remember that I had to stand up to Texaco in 2005 into 2006. When Texaco wanted to increase the price, at the time they wanted to increase the price of a 20-pound cylinder up to $46, you know. Yes, that is what they wanted to do. And we are talking to them at that time, it was not under price control. So those who are saying, if it's not under price control, just leave Texaco, just leave Rubis and leave Shell to do what they want to do. Well, we're having challenges with them even when we have it price controlled. I would not want to think what will happen with this matter, having been in it for many years and all the ins and outs. Now, what have we had? On Thursday, under my instructions, I had people from the Ministry of Trade and the Ministry of Finance speak to the people from Sol and Rubis. When I contacted the Director General of Finance and Planning at about 3 o'clock on Thursday to find out the consequence, the result of the meeting, the report that I got and the advice that I received caused the Prime Minister to make a determination. Because the fuel, the LPG price had to come down. I was determined for it to happen. And that's when we brought the price down from 41.81 for the 20-pound cylinder to $29 in Area 1. I don't have to go through all the areas, because from that base, you simply add on the transportation costs elsewhere. And for the 100-pound cylinder, from 197 something to 138. You see, because the base price for LPG is the Mont Belvieu benchmark price. MONT BEL VIEU. Now it is this government which has insisted on the Mont Belvieu price, the benchmark price. Because for all the years before my time, and the matters came to a head in 2005, into 2006, for all the years, LPG used to be priced at 90% of kerosene. Well, there might have been good reason for that, because the kerosene price might have been stable and they used an approximate price. But when the kerosene price started to rise sharply, 90% of what is going up, you have to then question, as I questioned with Texaco, what is the base? Show me the bill out in detail. And just like how there are international and regional benchmarks for the sale of other fuel, so too for LPG. And the benchmark is the Mont Belvieu price. Because as all schoolboys who deal with science, or anybody who deals with industrial matters, will know that liquefied petroleum gas consists of butane and propane. And that is where we started to use that as the benchmark. We pushed that case in the Monetary Council of the Currency Union, and most countries have accepted that. We proceeded to have the Mont Belvieu price, do the build-up with all the various wholesale margins, retail margins. And you notice what we do set as wholesale and retail margins are maximum, prices are maximum, having calculated everything, including the retail and wholesale margin, the wholesale and retail margin, the base price, the transportation, insurance, all the ingredients of cost. That's the maximum price. Now, currently, two sets of people bring in LPG. Petrocarib and Rubis, formerly Texaco. Rubis sells to Sol, and Rubis sell to St. Vincent Motors. And it is through those they distribute. People still call them Shell gas and Texaco gas. But Texaco used to do that before. And Shell had their own bottles. And you know, you have to have the particular bottle with a particular head, and so on. Same thing with Petrocarib. Now, the problem with the Thursday meeting, and this now relates to Rubis. The professionals told me, the civil servants told me, that they were not getting a clear indication of what the actual base price was. So I made it plain that I am not going to tolerate any further games on this matter. We will set the price. And we set the price from the basis of our own research and what we look at in other jurisdictions which do not provide subsidies. Because there are some jurisdictions like St. Lucia that provide a subsidy for the 20-pound cylinders. This government and the one in Dominica, for instance, and Antigua, I think, still give subsidies for the 20-pound cylinder. If I have to help the poor, I don't help them there because, as I said, if I give a subsidy on the 20-pound cylinder, I'm giving to Ralph, I'm giving to Hans, I'm giving to Frank De Silva, I'm giving to the multimillionaire, and I'm giving to the man who is on public assistance. Ralph, Hans, Frank, and the multimillionaire don't need a subsidy for the LPG. So if I want to help as I always do want to help the man who is on the public assistance and the poor, I put a little something more on the wages, or I put a little something more on the public assistance to take care of that, which to me is the fairest and most sensible policy. In any case, subsidizing a scarce commodity which is expensive will only be a further drain on the economy and encourage people to waste it. So, the problem now exists, and you hear people talking about it on the radio, and I understand persons from the opposition talk it. But if they don't understand all of these issues and how you're handling them, you can come to jaundiced conclusions. You will notice, take the 20-pound cylinder. We put the maximum wholesale price at $21.65. Now, Sol is buying from Rubis, and Sol is saying, listen, it's at $21.65. For the wholesale, and the retail is 29. The margin there of $8.35 has to be distributed between Shell. $7.35, sorry, had to be distributed between Shell and the retail distributors. No. But that's the maximum wholesale margin. And I told the fellows from Rubis, you must negotiate a number smaller than the maximum for Sol, since they're a big consumer, a big purchaser from you. If Sol tells you that they have difficulties with the extent of their margin, and Rubis says to me, well, we will work it out with Sol, we will work it out with the Ministry of Trade and so on, as a maximum, because I told them, if you do not work it out in accordance with the normal market forces when I set the maximum, you only are going to put me in a position where I will reduce the maximum wholesale price. I could reduce it from 21 today and put it to 1965. I am not going to allow the consumer to suffer in respect of price and in respect of security of their supplies. In 2005, 2006, the battle I fought with Texaco, I'm not afraid of fighting any battle with anybody in the interest of the consumers of this country. Absolutely not. And I want to make that clear so that everybody can hear me unequivocally, with no water inside of my mouth. That is in relation to LPG. Of course, the man from Rubis, the manager, is saying that, listen, the way it was done, maybe we should have more discussion, but they were not providing the base information. And that's the beauty about having a price control. If you don't provide all the requisite information, well, they now tell me they're going to supply all the information to the Ministry of Trade. But we know what are the benchmarks. We know what they are. Of course, everybody has to sell as what the law now says that you have to sell. It can't go on the way in which it has been going. No. As LPG, let's come now. Now, the point is this. Petrotrin is the entity from which Rubis get their LPG. But they're sold at a benchmark price here in the Caribbean. But when Trinidad sells their LPG, let us say to the US of A or any country, they have to use the Mobile View benchmark. I come now to fuel, diesel and gasoline. And I believe that the first time that the people of this country understanding all this thing is from 2005, 2006, and now again. And some may have forgotten the thing about the LPG. But I want to talk now about the fuel. Let me deal with the benchmark price first. Sol brings in fuel, diesel and gas from Petrotrin. So too does Rubis. Remember, it's Rubis brings in the LPG, and Petrocaribe. Well, Petrocaribe just has what, 1/4 of the market? Approximately 25%. So we are interested in having the private sector, you know. We don't want to control the whole hog. We want to be in the place so that we can help to do stabilizations too. Being in the marketplace, plus of course our control, our price control mechanism juridically, legally. Let me declare first by saying that the price which we have been using for fuel, diesel and gasoline in the Caribbean is what is called the mean of Caribbean posting. Mean doesn't the expression mean doesn't mean that you mean you don't want help to buy something for somebody. Mean in this case means average. The average of Caribbean posting is the average of the Caribbean price. Up to October 2013, two companies, Petrotrin and Shell West, were involved in the postings for the mean of Caribbean posting. But from 2013 October, Shell West stopped. So it's Petrotrin alone. But when Petrotrin sells to America, they don't use the mean of Caribbean posting, they use US Gulf Coast price. And in 2012, we did an analysis through the Monetary Council. And we at the Monetary Council always pushing this. When we did the analysis in 2012, I want you to listen to me very, very carefully. When we did the price build out in 2012, using US Gulf Coast prices and mean of Caribbean posting, the retail price difference, that is to say what you buy at the pump for gasoline, was $2.23 less. In other words, if you had used US Gulf Coast prices, it would have been $2.23 less. We have just done an exercise in the Ministry of Finance. This time, Frank, we didn't use US Gulf Coast prices. We used the other one, Brent spot price. And for the whole of 2014, the difference was $3.08 per gallon, EC. No. Clearly, this issue of the benchmark which you use, just like how we use Mont Belvieu, whether you get it from Petrotrin or where you get it from, that's the benchmark price we're using with the LPG. And in relation to this matter, we must use not the mean of Caribbean posting, but we must use the US Gulf Coast price. Barbados, when they buy from Trinidad, they buy at US Gulf Coast prices. The people from Sal tell me that is something we have to deal with in CARICOM. It does not have to deal with it in CARICOM. I want us to deal with it in the currency union. Of course, I asked my Ministry of Finance to prepare a paper in conjunction with the Ministry of Trade, that I'll send the paper to CARICOM to show what is happening. And I will make it an issue at the heads. The delegation of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, whether I'm in the Bahamas or not, will make it an issue, and I hope to be there unless something else arises. No. Sol itself, according to what the officials in the Ministry of Trade tell me, that when it comes on the benchmark price which they use, they still quote for you Petrotrin, even if they are buying elsewhere. So for instance, the low sulfur diesel which they were buying, it was like pulling teeth without anesthetic to try to get what the benchmark price you are using from where you are purchasing. In other words, they gave us the mean of Caribbean posting, but it's only Petrotrin alone using that now. And it's not a transparent number. And I told both Sol and I told both Rubis that their failure to deliver respectively the correct benchmark prices, I will speak about it. Put everything in the public domain. And if I'm wrong on the basis of my officials who, because before I came to this press conference, I talked to the various persons, both Sol and also Rubis. I want to say this. The owner of Sol, Sir Kiffin Simpson, principal owner, is a splendid Christian gentleman. So too, Steve Francis, the local manager here. A tremendous Vincentian. A Christian gentleman who comes from a very good family. And we all have to make sure that we act together by providing all the relevant information. Sol locally here can't tell me that I must go to headquarters to get the base price where they're bringing in diesel at. No, I'm not dealing with headquarters, I'm dealing with Sol here. You must get it from your headquarters. We can get it from the headquarters. I just tried to get Sir Kiffin Simpson because I know him personally. I know him from way back when. And know him since I used to teach at university in Barbados. So that is dealing with the benchmark. Because persons were wondering why is it that we took so long that we were bringing on the gasoline and couldn't bring on the diesel. Because we were not getting the information in relation to the diesel, particularly the low sulfur diesel, which was purchased extra regionally. You can't buy the low sulfur diesel from a country outside of the Caribbean and still use a Petrotrin pricing, which does not even make low sulfur diesel, according to the information that I have received. But you notice, once we dealt with the matter, the rapidity with which we brought it down for the diesel, one last month and a big one of $1.89 this month. And this is the 5th reduction we have had since the prices start to come down for gasoline. And I've explained over and over the rolling 3-month average. I don't know if I have to do over that here again, but if anybody don't understand it, they can ask anybody who has heard me over and over. Let me say this. If any distributor, Salah or Rubis, saying that with LPG, that they had stock, and it's a different stock. All I say to you, we have people who can count in the Ministry of Trade, and we have people who can count in the Ministry of Finance. Just keep your inventory. Tell them the story. They will tell the authorities the story. And if there is any recalibration which is required, it will be done. It's not the first time we're doing it. Unnecessary problems are being created. I do not know whether some people are testing the resolve of the government. I hope that is not the case. I don't know if they want to create the impression among the people, even though it is not so, that they want to hold the people to ransom. Because I would not accuse them of holding the people to ransom. But the people may get that impression. But it is the business of the state, the government, to be there to ensure that there is fairness. We want to see the private sector survive. Rubis and Sol. I want to see it. And they're not charitable institutions. I want them to make a fair return on their investment. But I want to see the consumer get certain benefits and to have the security of the supply. When I talk like this, some people may say, you see, behind, well, you see, Ralph don't want the private sector. Well, I mean I don't want the private sector. I want them, but you have to deliver it within an appropriate regulatory framework. That is what I'm saying. And the people know this, that I repeat it, I took on Texaco. When the opposition in 2005, 2006 said, I remember one of them said, how I could take on Texaco like this. How I could take on Texaco. With all their power and all their might. Texaco was selling fuel in the region then, as Rubis is doing now, as Sol doing now. They don't have refineries, you know. They're trading companies in fuel. They buy fuel. And they are not opposed to buying fuel and have bought in the past from PDVSA, from Venezuela. And Sol, of course, buys diesel for the Lomans power plant from Cane Hall power plant, from Petrocarib. And the reason why is that Petrocarib doesn't have the infrastructure. They have the infrastructure to deliver at Lomans, but not the infrastructure at the relatively small plant. But that has been happening before Petrocarib. It's not and all of a sudden, people trying to make it an issue. Well, thank God, Steve Francis went on radio and clarified that matter. And other sensible people saw it. It's a bidding process. Sometimes Texaco used to do it. Shell do it. Now Sol doing it. It's not a big problem. But I want also to ask persons when they're looking at prices. And it's only the media here can be the proper watchdog, you know. Because what sometimes the media does, they report what Ralph says, they report what somebody from the opposition says, as though there are two versions of the truth. There's one truth. So when you choose in the year 2014, and you look 1 month where we might be a little higher than somebody in something and a little one, they don't talk about the month in the opposition where we are lower. But if you take the whole year, and I invite the press to do it, and they will find that for gasoline, for the whole year in 2014, the lowest price for the whole year after Trinidad was St. Vincent and Guyana. We were at the same. Those are the facts. And after St. Lucia reduced their price for gasoline and for LPG, they said, you see, look, it's like this here. Although in 2014, we are way below St. Lucia. And they don't say in relation to the 20-pound cylinders for St. Lucia that St. Lucia subsidizes it. So the price at which the individual gets it in St. Lucia is below what the price should be. But what they don't say, you take the 5th of February. I quoted this already. The 20-pound cylinder on the 5th of February in St. Lucia was $32.89, the 20 pound. And St. Vincent one was $41.81. We were higher. But what they don't say is that for the 100 pound on the 5th of February, St. Lucia was $235.77. And we were $197.05. We were over $37 cheaper for the 100 pound. When they were saying St. Lucia was cheaper on the 20 pound, which is true at the time. But if you want to see something, you have 100 pound. And all I invite people to do. Yes, well, Petro-Carib was lower, 185. And so too, Petro-Carib was 31 for the 22-pound cylinder. 22 pounds. But you take, if you divide 235 by 35.77 by 5, because that's 100 pound. The 20 pound is 32.89 in St. Lucia on the 5th of February. If you divide it, 5 into 23, 5 fours are 20 and 3, 5 into 35, 5 sevens are 30, that's $47. But invariably, when you're buying 100 pound, you get it, the pound is a little cheaper in the 100 pound than if you just buy 20. So it should show anybody when they watch the St. Lucia price, if they want to. You see, you understand the point I make it? Or if you want to do the math the other way, multiply the 32.89 for the 20 pound by 5. And you would have seen what you will get, which would be much less than the 235.77, which is the 100 pound price. All you have to do is to use your common sense, and if you're interested in truth. And this is why I beg the press. I want to say this. I spoke to Kenton Chance a lot for Eyewitness News on this. You omitted one thing. You didn't, when you mentioned everything what I said, but you didn't mention that St. Lucia 20 pound has a subsidy. You can't get everything I say. But I just want to say that, but that would have been critical in the story too, which I'm making it here. Because I don't read everything you have, but when you interview me, or I have a discussion with you and you report what I say, I read it to make sure that what your report is. And it was a good report. I mean, I must say that. But I read it carefully as if I were an examiner grading you for an exam as a professor. Not because I don't have the professorial quality in relation to you for journalism, because that's not my specialty, but I know what I said. All right. So that is LPG. That is diesel and gasoline. Now, I've addressed four very important subjects thus far, and I don't want to overload it. How about the things I want to talk about? Just mention one more in energy. We have we just received the offer for a loan. In fact, we applied for the loan and we're getting it of 750,000 US dollars from the CARICOM Development Fund. 20 years, 2 years grace, 2%. Those are the broad terms. Given the source, the way how it came about, I thought it should have been a grant, but that's a matter we'll talk about with them a little later. They want to install a pilot out at Argyle, 281 kilowatt solar PV photovoltaic system. Now, with this math, we're bound to get more than 281 for 750,000 US dollars, because we have installed between 2007 and 2014, over a 7-year period, we have installed 580 kilowatt solar PV system capacity in Vinlec, Kane Hall, the Vinlec building, and down at Lomans. And Vinlec spent $2.4 million. EC. So clearly, we must be able to do better than 281 out of the airport with this. And I want to say this, and I always want people to remember how short-sighted the opposition can be when they scoff at things, which you do. Last year, the member for Central Kingston, Sinclair Leacock, when I talked about what we had installed, that's before the 350 kilowatts capacity solar PV systems, photovoltaic systems down at Lomans. He did some back of the envelope calculations, I don't know. I didn't even bother whether the calculations were right or not. He said Tiny, one of the famous ladies up in his constituency, would save maximum $12 if this were to be equalized across the system. A year, $1 a month. This is a joke. Where are you going with this? I was at pains to outline that Vinlec is going into solar as one of the renewables. Two big renewables obviously would be hydro, which is there, and geothermal. And I said to him, we have to build a capacity in Vinlec. We have to get ourselves with our hands on the technology. And we have to do solar too in order to be able to attract resources from outside. Through IRENA, for instance. Through other sources. The GEF, the Global Environmental Facility, because they want to see, my dear colleagues of the media, what we are doing ourselves in terms of renewables. Why do you think we are attracting the money we are attracting? Because we are involved in it. Now, NRG, which is the biggest company in the US of A, delivering solar to consumers, you can look them up. I met the Chief Executive Officer and Chairman, fellow Mr. Lane, L-A-N-E, at the Clinton Global Initiative, not last year, the year before. And we said that, okay, he will come down. put his company in touch with Thornley and everything like that. Thornley Myers of Finlec. They came on more than one occasion. And then the trail went cool, so naturally I had to inquire of our local people what happened. So Thornley wrote to me, Thornley Myers wrote to me. He said, well, they were suggesting that they can deliver to our grid solar at the price of 18.5 US cents. They could produce it and deliver it to your grid. They're not yet administering as how we're doing it to Finlec. They're not, no transmission and distribution lines and all the maintenance for the system, none of that. And Thornley said to me, well, they also had an escalator clause in it. Thornley said to me that they are delivering solar from their system at 12.5 US per kilowatt hour. So Fidel Neverson and the guys inside of Finlec over the years building their capacity, because the 350 kilowatt solar PV installation, which was opened in November, them fellas put down, while they're doing their other work, they put down 2,200 solar panels and 26 inverters. So we are building in-house capacity, and we get ourselves thoroughly familiarized with the technology so that we can deliver a commodity called solar to people with our own company, Finlec. We have done 79 buildings, an audit. This one has solar PV systems in it, 10 kV. And we would be doing others. Then I hear the argument about dependent on Venezuela for fuel. Well, we buy fuel from Venezuela through Petrocaribe, and Sol and Rubis buy from Petrotrin and other people. There's an international market for fuel. And if Petrotrin does not, if Petrocaribe does not exist, Venezuela still exists to sell fuel. PDVSA is a commercial entity. As in fact, people here used to buy from PDVSA before, companies. I don't know what get in people's heads when they're thinking about this commodity. In any event, by 2018, when God's willing, we have our initial 10 megawatts of geothermal in our grid. We'll have renewables of 80% rather than 20%, plus the little solar which we have now. And when that happens, we're not going to have the need for the extent of diesel that we have imported hitherto. We're building the storage capacity down at Lomans. I just got a report on it this morning. They should be finished in June. I spoke about it in the budget. Then you will have diesel, then you would have storage there to sell distributors to run the trucks and the cars. But we are weaning ourselves through our renewable energy policy from the matter of diesel from whichever source it comes, whether it comes from Venezuela, it comes from Petrotrin, Trinidad, or comes from anywhere else, for the purpose of the production of electricity. But of course, we're going to need it for road transport and for the transport in the marine transport and the like. And of course, you have aviation fuel for the planes. I just want people to see what we are doing. No. I want you members of the media to go and look at the 2000 budget address of the then Minister of Finance, Anim Eustace, and the section on energy. You know what he was talking about? Wind energy in the Grenadines. He said wind and other renewables. Never mentioned anything about solar, never mentioned anything about geothermal. His emphasis was on wind, and he threw in other renewables, as though for a catch-all now, but wind. Well, we can have a debate about the efficacy of wind. The point I want to make to everybody in this country, this government has a clear position on the pricing of energy products, the security of energy products, energy efficiency, and renewable energy. Now, in the budget debate, I lay out on behalf of the government a developmental framework, a developmental approach. Well, Anim Eustace as lead spokesperson for the opposition don't ever lay out a framework. It's a nitpicking here at the edges, a nitpicking there, but no framework at all. And even when he nitpicks, he doesn't nitpick properly because he is talking about an important energy question, Petrocarib, for 10 years without having gone online or even to listen to what we're saying in the House about it. Got it dead wrong. And the youngest member of the House, Luke Brown, pull him up on it. Can you imagine that? Luke Brown is less than half of Anim's age. And this youngster pull him up on a matter which they pamper setting among themselves. I mean, what a story. What a tribute to young people, eh? But in terms of the developmental approach, when St. Clair Leacock was talking, he says we need an alternative approach to development than the government. He said we need a basic need approach. Well, a basic need approach is very passive. A basic need approach is not a developmental approach. We deal with people's basic needs all the time. But a developmental approach requires an overall strategic framework to address several different bottlenecks in our lack of competitiveness. The education and training. We answer that with the education revolution. International air transport, to bring our people here, to bring people from overseas here, so that we can sell them our goods and services, tourism services, but other commodities. Energy is an important question, not a basic need question. It's a developmental question of the highest order to enhance the competitiveness of our industry and also of our agriculture. That is where you address things in a serious developmental manner. So I want persons to get a clear understanding as to where we are and where they are. I've only scratched the surface with a few issues, but sufficient to tell the people that whenever the next general election comes, there are competing perspectives, you know. And I want to say this today. When I read the autobiography of Sir James, and I read his speeches, I see an overarching developmental perspective. You may question elements of it, but he has one. He has a framework in which he is viewing development. The current NDP, they have no developmental framework, and that is the fundamental problem with them and Sir James. It's not an issue of personalities. It's a fundamental question of what perspective are you bringing to the developmental table. And this is a man who is alive and well, Sir James. He tells us that what exists there as the NDP, he's not recognizing it as the NDP. The name NDP is the party. But these fellas have stolen the name, and if indeed it were a tangible commodity, a report could reasonably have made to the Director of Public Prosecutions for larceny. Because they have not. They're doing they have another thing, they have a coalition of electoral elites under the name of the NDP. But the man who has founded it says, what you all are doing there, that's not my party. That is something else. And then further he has gone to say, the person who you put in to lead can't do the job as Prime Minister. And he must know a little bit about Prime Ministering, because he has been Prime Minister, I'm talking about Sir James, for 16.5 years. And when men occupy this thing as long as I have, and he has, we know a little bit about Prime Ministering. So are you going to take the judgments of men who have done more Prime Ministering than everybody else about a man and about a party for which I am not talking partisan politics here, no. I'm talking about developmental politics, development for the country and the alternatives which are available to the people. And what can I say? It's up to the people for them to deliver their verdict in the final analysis. All I can do is to explain the best I can over the limited number of hours that I have in any one day, which is 24 hours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. And I already see hands going up for questions. And we will start with Suzanne Dalzine from the newspaper. I don't know if I got the surname right again.
1426.
Good morning, Prime Minister.
Let me just say here, the Minister of Trade is just telling me that for LPG, St. Lucia, £20, up to, as of January 2014, they would subsidize the LPG, £20 at $14.26 for a cylinder.
That's ECCB stats.
ECCB statistics. Subsidy, yeah. So you see, when you compare like and like for me now, and don't pick out the number for gasoline in January as February approaches in St. Kitts when Denzil has an election on the 16th. When the whole of last year, he'd have built up a lot of buffer. Where I was much lower than, we were much lower than St. Kitts. So then you got the savings there, you build it up in your bonus. And you just let it go. You're reaching malice on election day, but you're sweetening the pot. I mean, and you're comparing, please. All I ask from the media, when you hear talk on this thing or anything, don't just take my word and report what I say and report what the opposition says. That's a lazy man's approach to journalism. Lazy man and woman approach to journalism. I understand the problem which media houses have. I understand the problem that media houses have. You don't have enough people. And sometimes with some of the levels of expertise and so on, and you don't have enough. They run you and send you on this story and that story. You hardly have any time to even say your prayers properly. Or you stretch. You know what I mean? And at least two of the three newspapers, they tried to do something. One of the newspapers reminds me of, you know, on the Thursday, I give And you journalists, you almost just laugh at some of these things. There's one man on a radio program on the Thursday after the Rockwater tragedy. And they were beaten up from the Wednesday and into the Thursday on the Coast Guard. So a fella called in to give some information, to say what you and the callers have been saying. Not true. The host of that program simply told this caller, who is bringing facts and reasonableness, here no, I hear you, but I ain't that today, no. I'm on a vibe, I get a vibe, I go into the vibe. I get a vibe, I go into the vibe. No, truth doesn't matter. You have a vibe, and you go with it. I mean, but you can't run journalism like that. I only want to make that point again for us to be able to do other than just report what Ralph says, what Eustace say, and get to the substance of the matter. And then put men on the rack. Sorry, Susan.
Yes, Prime Minister. In relation to the planned downsizing at Liat, how would this affect the staff here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines? And secondly, how soon is this expected to take place?
I don't know if it is going to affect us here or at all. But if it does, it would be very marginal. That's a management issue. The timetable has to do with the other elements. They have to sell off the dash 8s. Because they have to get the money to pay the severance. This is the problem when you're cash strapped. You want to do proper restructuring. You don't have the lump sum of money to do the extent of the restructuring which you want to do. And that has been part of the challenge. But we are hopeful that it will be done in this financial year, because I asked the management and they said by the end of June they're supposed to get rid of all the dash 8s. Well, the 7 remaining ones.
Yeah, good morning, or should I say good afternoon. I think I saw somewhere on the internet that the bus, you had announced earlier that the bus for the students on the North Windward side of the island was going to be here. I think it's here.
It's here.
How soon is it going to be in operation, and the process to find a driver, how is that coming along?
Okay. Well, you know, we had promised this bus, and I'd given the specifications. We'll get the opportunity to look at it. It's landed. And it's been registered and insured. I just want to make this point. I told couriers, I say, you have the bus, but you can't go and insure you can't go and get the insurance. I told Mr. Edwards as Director General of Finance and Planning, get 3 bids and get, not me select, I tell him select which, he's the chairman of the tenders board, select who you want insurance. Because it can't be right for couriers to sell us and couriers to insure it. That's a kind of in-house thing which you don't necessarily get the best price for the insurance that way. But in any case, you have to spread the thing, you know. You have to spread it. And in relation to the driver, recommendations are being made. People in Fancy have made recommendations. Station Sergeant Ballantyne, Montgomery Daniel would make. Other people's names would come into the mix, and the Ministry of Transport and Works would do the selection of the driver in the normal way in which that is done. But I want to say this to you. We are about to order another bus. This time we are ordering it from Star Garage. I just asked Minister Francis to ascertain that what Star Garage through Silky De Silva told me, that it's a 6-cylinder, all the specifications. This is now for the leeward side. The one for couriers was easy because couriers they got a connection with Barbados, so that's an easy one. But we can't give couriers both. So but Star Garage will take about 3 months. 3 months plus to bring the one in. But I have the money already for it. What happens is this. I know, because I'm in politics, sometimes some of my children, their name get into new things. Sometimes, and I will tell you, not only is that of no interest, but is unfair to the youths. Them. Camilo, my son, you can beat up on him because he's in politics. Huh? In fact, I hope all you beat up on him more than all you beat up on me because I'm an older man. When they're younger, they could take more licks. You know what I mean? But I say all that to say this. Storm is in his final year at the London School of Economics, doing law. Storm is an entrepreneur, and he's a good boy. I'm not promoting him for anything. When he read about this thing, he on his own went and sought out a benefactor to buy a bus and asked me about the specifications. I told him, well, I bought a bus already. We got the money for the one. Remember, we get some from Mustique Charitable Trust, we get from Lotto, we get from Petrocaribe. I said, but I was planning to order one from North Windward. And I had the specifications from Silky on my desk. So I sent it to him. And he has raised the money. The money came in the equivalent in British pounds, I think is $240,000. I sent a note thanking the people who contribute, but the person who made the contact is Storm. I mean, I know Kenton may be pleased to write something good about Storm because with the story about nature, he dragging Storm on it. I don't know how Storm will come in upon that. You know, it's some accident stuff there when Storm was a student and not even his vehicle and so on. It's his motorcycle. But I feel no way about that.
Sir, my next question to you.
Sorry. In the nature of life, there are burdens and there are benefits. You know, things are in balance. You know, the universe is in balance. Yes.
I'd like to find out if during the LIAT shareholders meeting, we've been hearing a lot about the decreasing fuel prices, oil prices, I should say. Has it been discussed?
Yes.
If we'll be seeing a decrease in fuel prices
for
airlines?
we have seen some decreases in prices for LIAT, and if you go online and you will see, especially if you purchase in I think those of you who probably have been traveling and who check, you will see it. You will see reductions. Oh, by the way, the minister told me this morning that he got a communication. You got it on your phone about Rubis asking if we can review the prices upwards. and that they will send all the documentation which they had not been sending. What an interesting world we live in, eh? Huh? But I'm revisiting that. I just remember that fact so that we'll tell you.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister. Brea King, Searchlight Newspaper.
Yes, ma'am.
On a radio program yesterday, the leader of the opposition, Adam Eustace, mentioned that the National Lotteries authorities would be taking a loan from
Yes.
the National Insurance Service.
Yes.
Right. When Searchlight contacted the chairman of the NLA board, Murray Bullock, he said that the matter was best addressed by you. As
Yes.
you
Well, I'm the minister responsible. So that's fair enough.
So my question is, can you please indicate the sum of money?
$6.5 million at 6% interest.
Okay.
The National Lottery has a lot of assets. And this is not the first time the National Lottery has been borrowing money. It had to borrow money, for instance, to do its headquarters. And with a new game which coming on, the national and their revenues. Look, when we came to office, the gross revenues of the National Lottery was just around $10 million, under $10 million. Currently it's 40 something. At one time it reached 50 little bit million a year. Of course, you have to do big payouts and so on. We restructured the National Lottery, put it on a good foundation. You see, the National Lottery existed as a little side thing. I give it institutional and legislative autonomy, strength and autonomy, and have innovative games and all sorts of things. The National Lottery is the best performer of all the lotteries in the Windward Islands. And none reaches 50% of its gross sales. None in the other Windward Islands. You hear me? Now, they just had another game. They just instituted another game. And at the time, in their rebranding to give it the lift, I removed all the taxes on the National Lottery. All of them. To help them, give them a lift. Things are not done by accident, you know. And the NIS, in this downturn in the investment climate, will be very happy to get an entity which can service the loan at the rate of interest 6.5%, which is the rate of interest which the actuary in the last actuarial report said they must get on an average for their investments. So it's not a favor which is being done. No. Is Mr. Yusa saying lottery shouldn't borrow the money?
He was questioning the reason why they would go to the NIS when they...
What he approved for some hotel in Martinique, which is still shrouded in all kind of, well, I wouldn't say mystery, I am not in command of even all the details of that. Even I have been around this long over the NIS. What about, that wasn't a good investment. The one up in St. Martin, for the St. Martin Airport and Seaport Authority, that was a good investment. They did that. So the point is this. So you want to tell me you could lend the St. Martin Authority at 6.5%, but you can't lend the National Lottery, which has a good income stream, good assets, to fix up the playing fields for the people in the first round, because they give it. The NIS is happy. The NIS is saying, listen, without my involvement, you know, they said they'll give them, I think the first tranche is $2.5 million. And they'll have to submit their various reports to get further drawdowns. The priority ones are Cumberland, which was mashed up in the disaster. Hope, the second one. Richland Park. There's a multiplicity of small things amounting to about $100,000, $150,000 in East St. George. California around the place there. To to fix up Chile. And once you fix up Chile, we have to fix up somewhere up at Raboka, to take the strain off there and down at Bronxtown, because Bronxtown was washed away, as you know, during Thomas. So what is Mr. Eustace telling me? That we must not borrow money. The NIS can't borrow in a normal, the National Lottery, the normal manner, satisfying all the requisites of transparency, interest rate, capacity to pay. That's what you're telling me. So the young men and women in those, well, I want when he goes to Cumberland. I want when Mr. Eustace and Patel go to Spring Village and Charles Village to tell them that Lotto shouldn't have borrowed NIS money, which they put money into to fix up the place, and which they're paying back. They must tell the people in Hope and Penistone the same thing. Go to Richland Park and tell the people that. In Calico, tell them that. What kind of absurdity what I'm hearing here? If they were going to get the interest rate at a preferred interest rate, and if they didn't have the capacity to repay the money, to service the debt. No. The lottery was set up for these purposes, you know. Sports and culture. You see, he has a conception of the lottery in a piddling sense. They had opposed the lottery taking charge of Victoria Park, you know. I remember Sinclair Leacock attacking it. But after it was complete, they said, what a good job they did at Victoria Park and continue to do. People forget at Victoria Park, you had a mountain down the bottom. You almost inquire as journalists, who had the contract from the government? I don't want to call anybody name. Who had the contract from the government? The NDP government for doing these things. Some people who talk plenty and write plenty about every subject under the sun. Some of them they know nothing about, but they're supposed to be expert in that field. Yeah? And they didn't leave Montsoufried. They left something just a little below Piti Bodom. So those are the facts, my dear sister. You think when we make public policy, naturally, as the minister responsible for the lottery, and they came to me, I said, yes, go ahead. They do the independent assessment, but I also told them that to implement this, they have to put in place a project implementation unit with an engineer, with a proper accounting staff, additional to what they have, to be able to run this project, a $6.5 million project, is a significant project with different places you have to manage. They can't manage it with the existing staff. So I already told them that. And more than that, I got from the NIS, I said, would you please write and tell me from your assessment of the institutional capacity of the NIS, what do they require to do? Then I took the advice from people in the Ministry of Transport and Works, technical people, and then Minister Francis, and I got everybody here at a meeting in terms of how are we going to do the things with implementation. I don't run government irrationally, you know. I think you all realize that by now. And you don't hustle me, and you don't hassle me. And especially now how I older and wiser, I only smile when some fellas talking foolishness. And being here now for 14 years, I want to ask you the question, Brianna. You don't have to answer it. After the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines have invested so much in me to be Prime Minister, and I have some unfinished tasks, you don't want some additional returns on your investment to make sure that the comrade is there another 5 years? You don't have to answer that. You know, this almost is like a, I want, let me just read this for you, because I think we should read this. This is to the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Trade by Rubis. Honorable Permanent Secretary, we are deeply concerned about the new regulated prices approved by the government of St. Vincent and Grenadines with effective date February 16, 2015, and by the fact that they were approved without any discussion with us and therefore without proper consideration of all factors affecting our acquisition costs for LPG delivered into St. Vincent. Well, that's an untruth. There was discussion with them. I don't know if this fella, Mauricio Nichols, I don't know if he was involved in the discussion on the Thursday. He's the CEO, okay. Well, but you had people who were involved in that discussion. That is when, as the consequence of that discussion, that I gave the instructions having received a report and the advice of the public servants of this country. Again, I tell you, I don't run government off the seat of my trousers. And you don't play games with the government of St. Vincent and Grenadines either, at least not once I'm Prime Minister. The new regulated wholesale prices approved by your government are significantly below our current acquisition costs and would result in negative margins for us, which we simply cannot accept. This is as a result of the fact that since 2011, the last time when LPG prices were changed by your government, our acquisition premiums over OPIS Mont Belvieu have increased dramatically due to new commercial practices adopted by Phoenix Park Gas Processors Limited, the natural supplier of propane and butane, to the EC markets, including St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The alternative of bringing small quantities of LPG into the Eastern Caribbean from the USA Gulf Coast would be even more expensive. We therefore request from your esteemed government that consideration be given to the fact that our acquisition costs over OPIS Mont Belvieu has increased significantly. And we respectfully request that you reconsider the wholesale prices that have been approved and revised to the following proposed levels. Hear what they want, the wholesale. Wholesale, you know. Wholesale, 100-pound cylinder, they want the wholesale price to be 132. Currently, the wholesale price for the 100 thing is 101.25. If it goes to 132, it can't sell for 139. It can't sell for 138 retail. 25-pound cylinder, they wanted the wholesale to go to 35.25, which is now 27.07, the wholesale price. And the popular 20-pound cylinder, they want it to be the wholesale at 28.25. So that if you were to accept that, it means that we'd have to sell it at a number close to $40. $37, $38. Eh? I'm talking about. Then they go on. We understand that these prices are significantly higher than the new prices your government has approved, but they are the minimum prices we require to preserve our historical wholesale margin in light of the sharp increases in acquisition premiums we have seen since 2011. These minimum prices are based on our current landing costs and would have to be re-evaluated should the Mont Belvieu postings increase. We hope that you will appreciate that we have invested large sums in our LPG filling plant at Annisvale and in refurbishing a considerable number of LPG cylinders to provide the consuming public in St. Vincent a high-quality cooking gas in bottles that are clean, nicely painted and attractive, a huge improvement since 2001. We respectfully request you take urgent action to rectify the regulated LPG wholesale price so that we can remain a viable and vibrant LPG supply into St. Vincent and the Grenadines. This still doesn't give us anything with the details of the build-out, which they still say, which they told me today, the gentleman who is on the ground here, that they're going to send for us. How trade begging you all the time for it and you can't bring it? Hmm? And so I spoke to them, to the local people here for a thing. And no doubt the minister will discuss with his officials and will provide a suitable reply to this letter. So I just want to give you, now, one of the things, what you have to watch for, one of the things you have to watch for, you see this letter? Don't be surprised that tomorrow morning the opposition NDP is supporting Rubis. Don't be surprised. Either explicitly or through their dancing. So let the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines know who is in their corner and who not in their corner. Sorry, Kenton.
Prime Minister, good afternoon. Kenton Chance of Eyewitness News and the Caribbean Media Corporation. Last month at the IRENA conference in Abu Dhabi, an official of IRENA said that the lower fuel prices it gives the region CARICOM breathing space to move into renewable energy. I want to know what is your view on this and what are some of the other factors that one has to consider in such a discussion?
Oh, I mean, undoubtedly. The fact that the prices are coming down, have been coming down. We have to make sure that we are very active in this period to deal with the renewables, because as sure as the sun rises, the prices are going to go back up sometime. Kenton, you must have been studying this issue, and the other journalists the same thing. I think I've seen something from Brianna also. In the US, because of shale oil, the fracking process, the US had become a major exporter of fuel from shale oil. Now, at $120 a barrel, at $80 a barrel, at $75 a barrel, some people say at $60 a barrel, shale oil will still be able to make money, but at a lower price. So these fellas, the people who are controlling the oil industry, it is clear to everybody who mature enough to understand how businesses operate. They wanted to restrict the investment, additional investment in shale oil, and it had that effect, because below a certain price for the fuel. But when they get you knocked out of it like that, for you to come back again, they will jack it up in the period too. But we have two issues, or three issues. One, we have to grasp that the oil prices currently, while they may remain like this for some time, they are likely to rise. Secondly, the foreign exchange in buying imported commodities, in this case fuel, when we have water, sun, and geothermal, we will save significant foreign exchange and strengthen the resilience of our economy. And thirdly, of course, is the question of energy security. The sun ain't going nowhere. We are at the 13th parallel. Again, that. The water Ain't going anywhere provided that we make sure that people ain't cut down one in a wanton manner. The trees in the catchment areas and so on, and we deal with that. And the geothermal is there. It is there, nature has put it there. So those are the important things. None of you who are here now as a journalist would have been around when Milton Cato took the decision to do the investment down at Cumberland. But there was a discussion at the time that the price of energy is so, the price of fuel is so low, we're borrowing all this money for. Of course, the money was very low rate of interest. But you see the importance of what Cumberland has turned out to be, to help us to lift the amount to 20% of our fuel. It's the same thing, just sometimes when big decisions are taken. You see where we are here? None of you who are here and the young people who are out there wouldn't know. This is reclaimed land, you know, where this building is. The whole strip from the port section just below the port, go right down, just before Bottom Town, reclaimed land. There's a lot of acreage here. Seawater used to come right up to the road at Bay Street, right in front of the police station. There was where you see shops going out, just below here was a jetty, and Porter Jetty was even down where Corey's Lumber Yard is. PH Lumber Yard. As a young fellow going grammar school, we used to gather on mornings and jump off by Porter Wharf. When they were doing it, people say, but what kind of craziness is happening there? Ketewan Baxi. I remember the PPP under Ebenezer Joshua. They had some little land, some little wave action somewhere else. This is because they disturbed God, water, here. So. Could you imagine what the city would have been like without this reclamation project? And all of these very big things, you're always having people who are interested in what you may call the minute basic needs. The same thing they're talking about the airport, you know. You think Ralph building an airport for Ralph? In 6 years' time, I would reach the average lifespan of a Vincentian male, even though I get a little bit more broader. This thing is for you all, you know, all the young people and those who are coming along. This is a project for 50 years, 100 years. That's what it is for, you know. And so that the question which you asked, these are some of the considerations in terms of the economics of it, which you have to take into account. I listed 3 things for you there.
But notwithstanding what you've said, these are times of slim economic means across the region. Are you confident that other governments would invest in renewable energy as they should, or do you think that they would probably use the resources for other perceivably more pressing and immediate social needs?
Well, you know, Kenton, their priorities, and you have to, part of government is the balancing of priorities, what you want to do. And you have to find creative ways to do things. Young people are demanding that we fix up those playing fields. I don't have the money in the central government, but there are savings in the NIS, and there's an entity, a state entity, which can do it. So you do things in a creative manner. For the time being, we're inside of Petrocarib, getting a lot of benefits from the pricing mechanism because of the amount of fuel we buy for electricity. A time may come where it might be less important. But you don't just close your eye to it. You take advantage of what opportunities present themselves, and in a creative way, you apply them. Now, I believe that the way St. Vincent is going with renewables, and Dominica too, that these are serious governments addressing a problem which is tied to climate change too in a global sense, which is of an existential nature. And for us, competitively, the question of the energy is vital. And there are lots of adaptation and mitigation monies which are floating around to handle the effects of climate change. But serious people elsewhere want to know, well, what have you been doing? And you have to come to the table, and when we come and we list off the things which we have been doing, you know what, men and women walk away every time we go to meetings. This is a serious group of people. This is a serious government. This is a serious people trying to address an issue. Some of them say, well, we wish if other governments would be like you across the world. And you can see that. You have been to these meetings, and you will see the appreciation of this kind of work.
And Prime Minister, it's been several months since the houses at Green Hill, the houses being constructed by the HLDC, were due for delivery. Can you give us an update on that?
Well, the new chairman, Sir Vincent, is providing me with a report either later this week or early next week. The outgoing chairman had provided me with, there were almost all the houses were over 70%, some 90% complete. 2 or 3 were about 20–25%, and then 2 didn't start at all. I'm telling you the data from off my head. 2 which didn't start at all. They had to do with 2 police officers. They had to, the land, there had to be a transfer of the land, so no start could have taken place. And the new chairman has the mandate to deal with this matter as a priority. I just want to say this. Beresford Phillips has been a very energetic chairman. But in this year, where between now and March next year, we have to have an election, general elections. You have noticed how this government has functioned. I don't allow anybody to be chairman of a state enterprise who is a sitting member of parliament or somebody who is likely, who is a candidate or likely to be a candidate. Because I don't want that institution to be in any way sullied by any perception of any political bias, interferences, or anything of the sort. In the case of me, Prime Minister, I'm elected by the people, and I'm put here. But the accounting officer in the office of the Prime Minister is not me, you know, it's the Cabinet Secretary. The accounting officer in the Ministry of Finance is not me, you know, it's the Director General of Finance and Planning. The accounting officer in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is the Permanent Secretary. So that I can't spend any money which is budgeted. I can't spend any money unless it's budgeted, and I can't spend it in a manner unless it is authorized. Because the person who has to answer is not me, you know. I have to answer at the bar of public opinion, but the person who has to answer juridically is the accounting officer, and who has to answer to the director of audit, not the politician. And I always make sure that all our ministers understand this. So, Kenton, I want to give you the assurance, and beyond yourself, who asked the question, the people with the Green Hill, that the matter is actively being dealt with, and a process of speedy completion would be put in place.
Any timeline?
Well, when I get the report by the end of this week, next week, I have a discussion with all the parties concerned, and then see what resources they have, how much money to come in, what other resources they may need. You know, the practical questions now, and sort them out.
Because I'll call you back next week on that.
Yes.
So James has written publicly about the outcome of the case at the Privy Council,
Yes.
and one of the things he spoke about is the cost.
Yes.
Can you comment on that?
No. I can't comment on the cost for the simple reason the matter is in the hands of the Attorney General and the lawyers for the government, and naturally Sir James's lawyers. Whatever the costs are determined in the proper juridical manner, they'll be dealt with. But I thought you were going to ask me. There's a sentence. You have the statement there.
No, it wasn't sent to me. I saw it in the press.
Okay. He said that. It struck me. He's the leader. He's the leader, founder of a party. Gave another man in 2000. He said in a sentence, he said, I pursued my quest for justice. Or words to that effect. Without any support from anyone. Words to that effect. It was remarkable to me that he's involved in a matter with the Otley Hall inquiry. And his own party gave him no support. That to me. That, you see, different people read different things, you know. And I read him very carefully. I read him with absolute care. Just like you read the thing about cost, I read that too, but I also read every word of Sir James's article, and I read it slowly and carefully. And when that was said, when that was written, it jumped out at me. Woe be unto the day if I am in any difficulty and my party leaves me standing alone. I will have to sing the old song, I'm just a lonely boy, lonely and blue. I'm all alone and have nothing to do.
Prime Minister, since you're on partisan politics, I'd like to ask you, how soon do you think your party would have all of its candidates in place? Do you have a deadline by which you're hoping to achieve this? I'm scheduled, well, it has to be confirmed by the Central Executive, but sometime around the middle of April, we're having our convention. And I feel pretty sure that we'll have everybody in place by then. But if I'm advised otherwise, through inspiration, that matters should be brought forward, they'll be brought forward with alacrity.
Mr. Prime Minister, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Frank.
Yeah. Now, you said just now that you listen to some of these stuff and you smile. I listen and I believe there's a need to rebut. For example, I have in my hand, somebody sent me this page from Facebook. SVG TV News, Bigger Bigs went out of business. Franklin Murphy makes a comment, but then Ms. Luzette King chimes in. She said, this is more than an allegation. That is, the Attorney General at the meeting warned him, that is Bigger Bigs, that she would have my DPP, quote, lock you up if you were caught building blocks. Is there any truth to that statement?
Listen, Frank, you know, this kind of, I mean, the Attorney General could answer for herself. But I never asked the Attorney General that question, but I can tell you, knowing the woman, that that would be absolute rubbish. But what does that have? I mean, Bigger Bigs has an establishment making blocks since the days I was at his opening. Nobody can stop you from making blocks. I mean, when people write them kind of thing, now you may say, well, no AG can stop somebody making blocks, which is a fact. But the question is this, for her to say it would be just absolute rubbish. This is why And the track record of the person who is quoting would make all reasonable persons just simply stoops their teeth and say it's absolute rubbish. Of course, it is amazing that such an error of judgment could have been made by the leader of the opposition, head of the NDP, that 2 years ago they got that woman there to address them as their guest speaker, who want a tsunami to mash up St. Vincent and the airport, and who are advising bigger bigs, from what I've read, that you know, she wouldn't support murder, but some violence is in order.
Yeah, shed blood.
Yes, some
But
violence is in order.
stop at killing.
Yeah.
Now,
I mean,
another question for you. You see, because I wish I could get you in a forum where I could play these tapes and you could respond to
yes.
them. Does the St. Vincent have any oil stored in Antigua?
Absolutely not.
All right. Now, I'm going to give you the meaning of a word here. A slush fund. A fund for bribing public officials or corruptive propaganda.
Which is that?
Hold on. I mean, according to a recording I have, a slush fund, Petrocarib money, has been used to set up a slush fund. If such a fund existed, who would have been the person setting up the fund, sir?
It has to be the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, which I head. But the Petrocarib is a company, and in the same way, you know, the person administratively who is in charge of Petrocarib is a no-nonsense woman who is a senior public servant for Ferguson. And she's there and she can come back into the public service. Faye would not permit a bad penny to be spent by any monies which come through Petrocarib. So, I mean, it is, I don't know what funding of propaganda which NDP, which Petrocarib has done, or what, who they have bribed. I mean, this is the kind of ridiculous falsehood which you get.
No, but you think this kind of statement could lead to legal problems for somebody?
Undoubtedly.
Thank you. No. No, two more. We mentioned...
Nato just remind me that he's a director of Petrocarib, so he a good Christian gentleman.
He didn't set up none of this funds.
Well, he will have to approve the setting up of a slush fund.
A slush fund for bribing public officials.
Listen, it's public servants on the board, you know, and St. Vincent.
Mm-hmm. Now, one of the other thing, you have always said that there are people with a personal something against you. Now, I have been told, I'm just going to name two. You named Miss Luzette King before, guest speaker at the NDP. She's on record as saying that you blocked her from getting a job. Mr. Jerry George has also said that you tried to get him fired. You see, because people need to know this sort of thing, so that when these people write their stuff or say their stuff, they know the basis from which they're saying it. Have you ever, could you give us any explanation as to maybe Mr. Jerry George?
I thought that Jerry would say that I advised him to take the job at with DG Cell. And I was asked by persons very high up in DG Cell, what did I think of Mr. George? They didn't ask me. I didn't have any veto power or anything. I told them that I think that Mr. George is a good person who will do a job diligently for them. This was in 2002 or thereabouts. He came to my office and sat down with me, and I told him, when he asked me, I tell him I say, my brother, you have to take care of your sunset years. Not sunset strong rum, but your years, you know. So in the case of Luzette King applied for a non-existent job. By that I mean, approval had not yet been given by the OECS authority to to the OECS Secretariat for a particular job at the Brussels mission regarding trade. But the then chairman, as I recall it, had said to the OECS Director General, go ahead and start, and you could advertise. By that time, we should be able to get. He was confident that the post would have been set up. But many of us had a different view. We thought that the place to do trade was not at Brussels, but in Geneva. And we have a mission there at the WTO. We have an office there. Because the trade which was being done in Brussels was largely bananas and sugar for members of the OECS. Sugar in the case of St. Kitts, bananas for St. Vincent, St. Lucia, and Dominica. And those preferences were winding down, independent of any of us, through the WTO mechanisms. But when different persons who apply for positions in the OECS, if the person comes from your country, you're asked what is your opinion of that person, and if there's any security question. And I told them that I did not think that Miss King had the skills or the temperament to be a diplomat. And Miss King came and asked me about that because somebody who was in the OECS system told her that that was my view. She came to my office and I told her exactly that.
Thank you.
I mean, you can, the point about it is this: as the Prime Minister of a country, I'm asked something, and I gave the reasons. I told her, so that now if you want to hold it against me, hold it against me, but the public can make the judgment as to whether my own opinion has been vindicated by subsequent events.
Thank you, sir. Now, you brought up the subject came up, of course, hot in the air is LPG and so on.
Yes.
Now, does the government set a minimum price for the sale of LPG?
No, we set a maximum price.
So that at any time, if I am selling LPG, I can bring the price down
Well, Petrocarib does that.
to a reasonable price of, say, 155.
You can bring it to whatever price you want to bring it to.
In which case, you would not have gotten that letter
You
if
can
they had
bring
brought it to a reasonable
but
price.
interestingly,
Yes.
Sol is saying that the price of $21.65 for the 20-pound cylinder, the wholesale price, is too high given the current Mont Bellevue price, and that should be reduced. My conversation with the Sol people this morning is that they said that it should be $18 and some cents rather than $21.65. Now Rubis is saying it has to be $28, $28.25. You notice? Sol is telling us, he told me in a telephone conversation that given the, and told you to permanent secretary in a meeting with them. He said he called him, the people at Sol. So, and he is, I'm a believer, and as a good Catholic, but he is a very special evangelist. NATO. Pierre Williams.
One more thing, sir. Up to this morning, there was a discussion going on, and I know where it came from, that the government has been making a killing, thieving the people of St. Vincent with the high price of LPG. What?
It's nonsense, just total rubbish. If anybody has been making any killing, is the people who are importing the fuel.
The wholesalers.
The importer, that is to say, Rubis.
Okay. Now,
If anybody has been making the killing, because there's a build-up in the normal way, and in relation to the other pricing mechanism. We have the rolling 3-month average, and there's a bonus-malus system. And sometimes the price may be such that you're in malus, and you therefore have to net off the bonus and the malus.
one more
And
thing.
for people who are listening, bonus, it comes from the Latin word good. I mean, is the Latin word for good. Good, and malus is bad. Good, bad. Up and down.
I have a text here I want to read to you, because again, this is on, you mentioned this morning the MCP. I don't know how many persons were even aware of that. The MCP was relevant when 3 refineries in the Caribbean, Aruba and Curacao and St. Croix, closed. Petrosin's mean is an expensive fast, crippling other Caribbean states, which is where you go where their pricing is $3 more than Gulf State pricing. Again, we need to explain these things to people.
Well, Frank, I
Yes.
am glad independently, the quote which you have picked up on the net there, I told you what the study which we did in 2012, and also what we did in 2014 in the Ministry of Finance. And the $3 which you talk about is precisely this, is roughly the same that they're talking about there, substantiating the point that I'm making, that we have to go to another benchmark price other than the mean of Caribbean posting, because I use the word for you, that is not transparent. The author of that article said it's a farce, because it's them alone. Up to October 2013 was them and Shell West. And Shell West stopped posting with the mean of Caribbean posting. So it's Petrochin alone. And I want people to understand this. Whenever Petrochin sells to the U.S. market, they have to use U.S. Gulf Coast prices. That's the point.
All right. Final question now for the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Consumer Affairs. He's not going to come here and get away with it. We heard from Flo a long time ago. And Flo remains a problem. I know they're having meetings to do with margin and so on. But Flo's been ripping us off just like other people are ripping us off. Well, they stopped ripping me off because I discontinued my service. I mean, before you answer that, there's also a pressing need in this country for a serious Department of Consumer Affairs. Could you address those two?
Yes. The Flow and Lime, as you know, have proposed a merger, and the merger has been approved in some jurisdictions in the Caribbean. I understand that Jamaica has approved it. The OECS, at least the ECTEL member states, have not yet approved it, and we are considering the pros and cons. In St. Vincent and the Grenadines, if the merger takes place, the Flow Lime entity would have a monopoly on television, on fixed line telephone, and on fixed line broadband. So they would have a monopoly in 3 of those areas, and there would only be competition in the mobile telephone and mobile data space. We are currently considering, along with ECTEL, how we deal with that proposed merger. And in fact, on Monday coming, there will be a public consultation at the Methodist Church Hall at 4:30, and we encourage the press and the public to come to express their opinions and to hear from both the Flow and Lime and also Digicel and other interested parties on that. And we're trying to formulate a position collectively, but of course St. Vincent and the Grenadines will have to act in its own interest ultimately. On the issue of consumer protection, I couldn't agree with you more. I think that our current legislative framework is weak at the moment. I think a lot of what you heard the Prime Minister talking about today is the Prime Minister having to use his authority and his bully pulpit to effect consumer protection on behalf of Vincentians, because some of the legal and regulatory framework does not exist at the moment. I think we have to do a lot better on that. There was a lot of talk about an OECS competition commission, but the OECS heads at their last meeting decided that that was not the way to go, that there were other structures in place. So we'll have to go in that direction, and we'll also have to strengthen our own legislative framework. And in our own result indicators for this year's budget, there was that we planned this year to strengthen our consumer protection legislation, because increasingly it is an issue, and increasingly in these small societies, it only takes one dominant player, whether it's in data or selling furniture or selling gas or whatever it is, to sometimes infringe on consumer rights, and we have to protect those rights in this marketplace. So I agree with you.
If I may just say one thing, sir, for completeness, on the where Camilo mentioned that the OECS authority took the decision 2 weeks ago in Martinique not to go ahead with the OECS competition commission. The matter wasn't left just there. Under the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas, there is a CARICOM competition commission. And the CARICOM competition commission, they had advised, and leaders had accepted this at CARICOM, and I'd always felt that that's not the way to go. That you should have an individual competition commission in each territory, linking with the CARICOM competition. It will be too much money, too unwieldy. So the thought evolved that you must have the CARICOM commission, I mean the OECS commission for all the OECS countries, the OECS competition commission. But it's still a very expensive thing to run. So the idea is to have the CARICOM competition commission designated as the competition, not only CARICOM-wide, but for individual countries who may wish to so designate it, and to provide supplementary staff to deal with whatever those issues are. Let's take, for instance, the bulk of these competition issues, Frank, are regional flow issues. It's so in Jamaica, it's so in Trinidad, in the different places coming down. So it's a CARICOM-wide issue. Some countries may not have it to the same extent. But we have to address it there, and if we need, we will then have within our own jurisdictions, maybe units which can then provide support to the CARICOM Commission, and the CARICOM Commission being the entity which overall, which would address these competitive issues. So there is the matter on which you touch, which Camilo has correctly answered about the legislative framework, has several dimensions which is currently under very active study by the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Right, are there any further questions? I take it that there are no other questions from members of the media. Let me thank you, Prime Minister, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Permanent Secretary, and the members of the media, Star Radio, NBC Radio, WFM, from Cabinet Room, passing you back over to your various stations.
Well, St. Vincent and Grenadines, we're just listening to a live press conference with the Prime Minister, Dr. Ralph Gonsalves. I want to welcome you back here into the studio of Star 933-1047. We got about 8 minutes going past to 1 o'clock, and we want to welcome you back here.
Up to $2,000 if caught breaching the act. So, strap on those helmets and buckle up those seatbelts. It could save your lives and some much needed cash. This is a message from the Royal St. Vincent and the Grenadines Police Force in collaboration with this station.
It's here, SVG's newest beauty store, The Beauty Shack.